Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I came home at 3:17 a.m. to find the living room glowing blue from her laptop screen. Maya was sitting on the couch, headphones on, eyes unfocused, smiling at something only she could hear. Her coffee from Starbucks had gone cold hours ago. The screen showed a Discord call still running, 3 hours, 42 minutes. I stood there long enough for the clock to tick once before she noticed me. She jumped, closed the laptop halfway, and said she'd fallen asleep listening to music. But I'd seen the reflection of the screen in the window behind her. It wasn't music. It was a man's voice. My name's Ethan Miller, 38, paramedic with Spokane County EMS. I drive a Ford Explorer that smells like adrenaline and antiseptic. My world is pulse rates, oxygen masks, and seconds that decide whether someone gets another tomorrow. Her world is light, digital light. She's a freelance illustrator, paints emotions she doesn't feel anymore. Somewhere between deadlines and creative exhaustion, she stopped reaching for my hand at night. The last time she kissed me without distraction, I think the leaves were still green. That night, I didn't say a word. I just watched her pretend to be tired. When I left for the station, she was already back online. Her status read, "Late night vibes with Aaron." I didn't know the name, but it sounded rehearsed, like someone she'd been saying for a while. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was professional networking. Artists live online. But then her phone started living face down on the table. Notifications silenced. When I brushed her arm in passing, she stiffened, like touch was suddenly something primitive, unnecessary. Once, I reached to adjust the blanket around her shoulders, and she said, almost laughing, "Touch is overrated." The words stung harder than she realized. My whole job is built on touch, steadying hands, compression, revival. To her, it had become outdated tech. At work, my partner joked that I looked like I hadn't slept in days. I hadn't. Between calls, I found myself scrolling through her public art accounts, looking for signs of him. Found sketches captioned "Energy Exchange," "Connection Beyond Skin." Digital ghosts of whatever she thought love was now. The next evening, I walked in and saw her smiling again, headphones on, lost in that same blue light. She didn't notice me. The notification sound came from her phone, faint but clear, Telegram this time. A message preview. "You make nights feel like oceans." I turned off the hallway light, stood in the dark, and understood. She wasn't cheating with a person. She was cheating with an absence. The thing about silence is that it grows. It fills the spaces where touch used to live. Within weeks, our home sounded like an empty corridor. Maya stopped joining me for breakfast, saying she worked better at night. I'd come back from 12-hour shifts to find her half asleep on the couch, Spotify still playing something ambient, the same artist she said Aaron had recommended. I didn't ask who he was. I already knew. I could hear it in her tone when she mentioned someone who understands creative flow. She used to say that about me once, back when I was her safe place, not just the man who forgot to turn off his radio after work. I noticed her smile was different when she texted him. Softer, hidden, the kind of smile people wear when they think they're alone. One night, she was in the kitchen making tea, her phone on the counter. A message popped up. I didn't mean to read it, but my eyes did. "You're the calm I can't touch," it said. Her fingers hesitated above the keyboard before she replied, "Maybe touch is overrated." That's when I realized it wasn't just words, it was belief. She'd convinced herself that the body didn't matter, that warmth could exist through pixels. I wondered if she remembered what real skin felt like, the weight of it, the gravity of presence. I didn't confront her. I just adjusted. Stopped leaving my phone charging in the kitchen. Started working extra shifts. There's a kind of peace in exhaustion. When you're too tired to feel, you stop expecting things to change. She must have noticed, because she began leaving notes like, "Miss you tonight," or "Be safe out there." Small gestures that meant less than they used to. The handwriting was rushed, impersonal, like she was practicing how to look like a good wife. One afternoon, I drove past a Best Buy after a call and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. I watched couples walk out with phones, tablets, things that promise connection. I thought about how we used to laugh over bad Wi-Fi, how now the connection wasn't the problem, it was what she chose to connect to. I bought a new phone that day. Identical model. No one would notice the difference. But the plan forming in my head wasn't about technology. It was about silence, the kind that cuts clean. The first time I heard his voice, it wasn't through her phone, it was through the wall. I'd come home early from a double shift, body still vibrating from the siren, mind half asleep. Her laughter floated from the office, light and unguarded, the kind of sound I hadn't heard from her in months. I stopped outside the door. Her headset was on, and the voice on the other end was low, measured, American, but softened by distance. He called her Muse. She laughed again. I stood there, hand on the doorknob, feeling something colder than jealousy settle in my chest. Not rage, just clarity. The kind you feel when you finally see what's been right in front of you. When she noticed me later, she acted casual, said she'd been in a group chat, brainstorming for a digital art project. I nodded. I didn't say that I'd heard her whisper, "You make me feel seen." That wasn't something you said to a coworker. That was something you said when you'd already crossed a line, even if it was made of code instead of skin. The next morning, she was at Starbucks, pretending to work on her tablet. I watched her through the window as I sat in my car outside. The reflection in the glass showed her face illuminated by Discord's interface. She was smiling at nothing, at someone miles away, maybe thousands. I didn't go in. I just sat there, letting the engine idle until the ice on the windshield began to melt. I realized I wasn't angry. I was curious about how long she'd keep lying, to me or to herself. That night, while she slept, I opened her laptop. Not to invade, but to confirm. Her messages weren't explicit, but they didn't need to be. They were filled with words about energy, alignment, the way he understood her wavelength. She'd sent him a photo, not of her body, but of her sketchbook, a drawing of two figures made of static, reaching for each other but never touching. His reply, "That's us." I closed the laptop quietly and went back to bed. She shifted in her sleep, murmured his name. Aaron, not mine. That was the moment I decided I wouldn't confront her. I would simply become what she'd chosen instead. Silence, untouchable, unreachable. I started counting her silences. 3 minutes between words at dinner. 27 seconds before she pulled her hand away when I brushed her fingers. Whole nights where the only sound was the faint click of her keyboard through the wall. It felt like living beside a signal that had lost range. At work, I touched strangers' wrists to find their pulse, pressed palms to sternums to restart hearts, while the woman I loved had already coded herself out of reach. Every call reminded me what real connection meant, the kind you can't fake, can't download. I'd come home to her blue light and think about the patients who'd begged for just one more breath. She had all the breath she wanted and wasted it on someone she couldn't even touch. One morning, she was on a Discord call before I'd even had coffee. I stood in the doorway. She didn't look up. Her voice was softer, warmer, the tone she used to save for me. She said she felt like she'd known him forever, that he understood energy better than words. He told her she didn't need physical contact to feel connection. I wondered if he practiced those lines, or if they came naturally to people who lived behind screens. She didn't see me leave. She didn't notice the front door close. On my lunch break, I parked behind the station and stared at the new phone in my glove box. I'd already transferred the essentials, contacts, data, work apps. The old one, the one she texted and called, was still synced to our shared account. That would change soon. It wasn't about revenge. It was about precision. She'd chosen a digital world, so I'd answer her in her own language, erasure. When I got home, she was humming along to a playlist on Spotify, painting on her tablet. I watched her mix color like nothing was wrong, like there wasn't a man in Los Angeles whispering into her headphones. She glanced up once, smiled absently, then went back to her screen. That's when I knew she was gone long before I ever decided to leave. And that when I did, it wouldn't be loud. It would be the clean kind of quiet she'd never hear coming. The next week, she started calling him art friend. It sounded harmless enough when she said it out loud, like she was trying to make him small, something casual. But the way her eyes softened when the notification tone hit, that gave it away. She'd built a world where he existed in constant presence, and I existed in the background noise of her real life. I watched her rehearse excuses that never needed to be said. Just working, group chat, commission deadline. I never asked questions. She didn't notice that I'd stopped talking at all. During one of my night shifts, we got a call about a teenager who overdosed in a parking lot behind a club. I pressed my hands to his chest, felt the bones crack, the life slip and come back in fragments. After we stabilized him, my partner leaned against the ambulance door, smoking. He said I looked like I'd been somewhere else lately. I told him the truth, I was. Every night, I went home to a body that didn't look up anymore, to a woman who believed connection could exist without touch. He laughed softly, said, "Then she's never been cold enough to know what touch really means." I didn't respond. When I came home that morning, she was asleep at her desk, Discord still open, the screen filled with late-night messages. He'd sent her a voice note. I hit play quietly. His voice was too smooth, too sure. He said she had light in her that the world didn't deserve. I looked at her, at the woman who once begged me to hold her when she couldn't sleep, now lulled by another man's disembodied flattery. I turned off the monitor, shut the laptop, and went to shower. The water hit cold first, then hot, the same rhythm as the anger that came and went. When I stepped out, she was awake, holding her laptop, asking if I'd touched it. I told her I'd only turned it off because it was still on. She nodded, but her eyes narrowed like she was looking through me, not at me. That was the first time I realized she trusted a voice on the internet more than the man who shared her home. And that trust was already irreversible. She started wearing headphones all the time, even during breakfast, even in bed. Sometimes she wasn't listening to anything. I knew because the light on the headset wasn't on. It was camouflage, a way to make the world smaller, to keep me out. One night, the silence between us was so heavy it hummed. She scrolled through her tablet while I sat across from her, watching the reflection of text messages blink across her glasses. She smiled faintly, typed something, then laughed under her breath. I asked who it was. She said it didn't matter. Her exact words were, "He's just energy, not real." I remember staring at her hands, the same hands that once clung to my uniform when I came home late, and realizing I hadn't felt them in weeks. At work, I handled more bodies than conversations. Heart attacks, crashes, overdoses. I touched lives she'd never even see, while she gave her emotions to a man who existed in code. During downtime, I caught myself checking her online status from the ambulance. Active now. Always active. Always there with him. I wondered if he ever thought about the reality behind her camera, the man whose name she stopped saying. One afternoon, she called to ask if I could grab dinner on the way home. Her voice sounded off, softened, distant. When I got there, she was sitting on the couch, her laptop open, candles lit like she was performing something sacred. On the screen, his camera was on for the first time. I only caught a glimpse before she snapped the lid shut. A man's face, blurry from motion, California sun spilling through blinds behind him. Her expression when she saw me standing there wasn't guilt. It was irritation, like I'd interrupted a dream. She said I should have texted first. I told her I used to live here. I didn't need permission to walk into my own house. She rolled her eyes, said, "You always make things heavy." I wanted to tell her that some things are supposed to have weight, but I didn't. I just nodded, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. Behind me, her laptop chimed again, that soft sound of digital intimacy. And in that moment, I finally understood, she didn't want distance. She wanted control over how close someone could get. The shift from distance to denial happened quietly. She stopped hiding that she was online. The laptop stayed open, messages visible if you looked long enough, as though secrecy no longer mattered. Once, I caught her typing something late at night. I watched from the hallway as her words appeared on the screen. "He doesn't get me anymore." She hit send, smiled at the reply, and whispered, "You always know what to say." It was almost tender, almost tragic. I walked away before she noticed me. Each step measured, each breath slower than the last. The next morning, she acted like nothing had changed. She brewed coffee, asked about my shift, mentioned she might take an online class with her creative group. I nodded. She didn't need to lie anymore. I think she knew I wouldn't call her out. The silence between us had become its own kind of pact, mutual, wordless, binding. I'd already started preparing, piece by piece, the way I do before a long emergency call. Except this time, the patient was me. I transferred photos, cleared contacts, backed up everything I didn't want to lose. I didn't rush it. I wanted the exit to be seamless, invisible. I started sleeping in my car between shifts, pretending it was because of overtime. She never questioned it. Maybe she liked the extra space. I think that was when I realized she didn't miss me anymore. She missed the idea of me. The version she'd built when we were still new, before screens replaced touch. One night, she left her phone on the counter while showering. A message popped up from him. "You feel like home, even through pixels." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. That one sentence told me everything about what I'd become. A placeholder, a physical outline she'd stopped coloring in. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she didn't notice me watching. She dried her hair, humming softly, the melody unfamiliar. I remember thinking how peaceful she looked, like someone who'd already said goodbye without saying the words. I turned, walked to the door, and stepped outside for air. The night was quiet, steady, and I realized I didn't feel pain anymore, just readiness. The night I decided to disappear didn't feel like a choice. It felt like gravity. I came home from a call around midnight, still smelling like smoke and antiseptic. She was in the same spot she'd been that morning, headphones on, her world glowing in that same cold blue light. I stood in the doorway, watching her lips move silently as she typed, her fingers dancing over the keyboard like she was playing an instrument only he could hear. I wanted to say something final, something sharp enough to make her look up. But then she laughed, quiet, genuine, almost joyful, and I realized she was already gone. While she slept that night, I moved through the house in silence. I unplugged the router, coiled the cord neatly, and left it beside her tablet. I took my badge, my keys, my wallet, and the new phone I'd bought weeks ago. The old one, the number she texted every morning, stayed on the windowsill, factory reset, blank as a clean page. My car was waiting out front, engine off, headlights dimmed. The air was cold enough to make my breath visible. For the first time in months, it felt real, something tangible cutting through the static. I sat in the car for a long moment before starting the engine. The house behind me looked peaceful, like a photograph of a life that had already ended. When I finally pulled away, the tires crunched over gravel softly, deliberately. There was no note, no explanation, no final message. She had chosen to exist in a world without touch. I was simply giving her what she wanted, absence, perfected. At the first intersection, I stopped, looked back once, and then turned left, toward the highway. The dashboard clock read 12:42 a.m. My shift started in 2 hours. I'd work like nothing happened. I'd drive until the road blurred, until memory thinned out into noise. Somewhere behind me, she'd wake up to silence, the Wi-Fi dead, my number unreachable, every account gone. She'd scroll through Telegram, Discord, Spotify, searching for me in the void she'd built. But all she'd find was what she'd taught me so well, the art of disconnecting. I worked that morning like nothing had changed. Calls, vitals, transport. Same rhythm, same pulse. But there was a strange calm underneath it all, like I'd stepped outside of my own story. My phone buzzed on the dashboard of the ambulance. Unknown number, then another. I didn't answer. At lunch, I opened the new device and watched the messages flood in through Wi-Fi at the station. Her name appeared again and again, the same words reshuffled. "Where are you? Did something happen? This isn't funny." Then, finally, "Ethan, please." I turned the screen face down and let it ring until it stopped. She'd made the world too loud. Silence was the only language left that still meant anything. That evening, while driving the back roads outside town, I passed the Starbucks where she used to sit pretending to work. The same seat by the window was empty. For a second, I imagined her there, clutching her phone, refreshing our chat thread like it was a pulse she could bring back. Maybe she'd call an Uber, go to my station, wait outside. But she wouldn't find me there either. Every trace of me, photos, location tags, messages, was gone. A digital ghost erasing itself in real time. By nightfall, I checked into a motel off the interstate. One of those places with humming neon and silence heavy enough to hear your thoughts in. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the news. Nothing in particular, just motion. The Wi-Fi password was taped to the lamp. I didn't use it. For the first time in years, there was no vibration, no alert, no pull toward a glowing screen. Just stillness. At some point, I pictured her at home realizing what had happened. The router unplugged, my phone wiped, my clothes gone. I imagined her running through apps, searching for something that wasn't there. Maybe she'd finally understand that disconnect isn't punishment, it's peace. As I turned off the light, the quiet felt clean. Not the empty kind, but the kind that rebuilds. And I wondered if somewhere in that same silence, she was hearing the echo of her own words, "Touch is overrated," and realizing how wrong she'd been. Weeks passed before I opened the news app again. By then, I'd transferred stations, moved 2 counties over, started sleeping without the hum of screens. My new apartment was bare, just a mattress, a coffee pot, and a view of the river. No Wi-Fi, no television. I didn't miss any of it. At work, people said I looked lighter. Maybe I did. There's a strange relief in vanishing cleanly, in knowing that somewhere someone is scrolling through memories you no longer belong to. She found a way to reach me eventually, a printed letter forwarded through the department. She'd mailed it because every number, every inbox, every account came back as dead. The envelope smelled faintly of her perfume, the one she used to wear when she'd still wait up for me after shifts. I didn't open it right away. When I finally did, the handwriting was shaky. She said she didn't understand why I left without a word, that the house felt like an empty frequency now. She wrote that she'd unplugged everything, deleted every app, even the one where she'd met him. Said she hadn't heard his voice in weeks, but still caught herself listening for it. I thought I needed something new, she wrote. But what I really needed was real. I folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. I didn't write back. What could I say? That I'd spent years reviving strangers while watching the person I loved let herself fade out? That I'd learned silence could be mercy when words stopped meaning anything? Sometimes, after a long shift, I drive past a Best Buy or a Starbucks and think about how easily people trade touch for connection, warmth for Wi-Fi. I don't judge it anymore. Everyone chooses their own kind of noise. Hers just happened to cost her everything. The last time I checked, her accounts were still gone. Maybe she finally learned that not every presence can be replaced by a signal. I keep her letter in my glove compartment, unopened since that first night. It reminds me that some things don't need replies. Some stories end exactly where they should, with silence, steady as a heartbeat, carrying its own kind of truth. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.